are some people who hate change. Our world is changing so fast right now that those who don't love change are going to be left behind. It is a twist in your head about how you think about AI in the future, not just as a tool that you use, but as a teammate that you depend upon.
She's a globally recognized AI thought leader who has run and scaled multi-billion-dollar business units for global giants like Amazon and IBM. Her best-selling book, AI First, Human Always, explores the opportunities and the dangerous blind spots of artificial intelligence. We have the inspiring Sandy Carter on the show today.
Most of the success that we're seeing with AI today comes when people focus on leadership and the team, not just the technology. Some people think, oh, I'm going to train my agent and then I'm done. And then it just goes. Well, you don't do that with an employee, right? Because things change. A person keeps learning. And the way an agent does that is you train it in different types of data. I think the number one skill everybody needs to have is...
We've had a lot of new listeners recently, which is super exciting. If you're one of them, welcome and thank you. Every week, we're bringing you the guests and the conversations that enable you to become the most extraordinary version of yourself. If that's what you're here for, I have a small favor to ask. If you could look down at your device right now and tap the follow button to follow the show, that'll make sure you never miss an episode. And that way, we stay connected on this platform as well. It only takes a second. It's completely free to do. And it really helps a small team like ours reach the people who are also committed to performing at their best. Thank you so much. Now let's get into today's episode. Sandy.
Yes.
You recently presented the top 7 things people need to know to make AI ROI positive here at South by Southwest in Austin. What's the most surprising thing in that list that people maybe struggle to grasp hold of or implement? What do you find?
It's really fascinating because one of the things I talk about is the new org chart. So for example, at my company, we have a human that's the director of marketing. She has humans that work for her as managers, and the managers manage people, humans, but they also manage agents. And so the interesting thing is people really struggle to see AI as a teammate, as a new part of your org chart versus just a tool. So for example, in our org chart with marketing, marketeers usually have to do a landing page optimization. So we have Darth Vader who does our landing page optimization. Usually marketeers have to do research. So we have Wookiee doing research for us. We named them so they could be teammates by name as well, so people could get used to it. And what we were able to do is get our team together and say, we're a startup, we're a unicorn, but we still need to be frugal with our money. So if we can't hire new people and we're really growing, what do we do? And so we decided to give agents roles. And I think for some reason that has been most pictures were taken of that org chart. Most questions were, how does the human manage agents? Do they do a performance review? Do they watch morale? It's just interesting because it is a twist in your head about how you think about AI in the future, not just as a tool that you use, but as a teammate that you depend upon.
Well, let's talk a little about that then, and I'm sure we'll get to the other points as well, which I'm really looking forward to. For those listening, the difference between maybe generative and agentic AI, first and foremost, like what is an agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So agentic, you're asking a question. So what you're doing is you're getting information back. So it's better than Google because you're actually asking a question like, write me this email or rewrite me the email.
And that's generative, not agentic.
That's right. That's
generative, yeah.
That's generative AI. And then agentic AI is around using agents. And agents can be autonomous. So you give them boundaries, but they actually work and make decisions on their own. So for example, I could have an agent that approves every purchase order up to $5,000. It will do that automatically, unlike generative AI, where you have to prompt it. That's where prompt engineering comes from. An agent will actually do that autonomously. And you have to put boundaries around it because otherwise it'll approve, up to $5 million. Like who knows what it'll approve, right? So that's really, I think, the really big difference between an agent and Gen AI.
So then how do we need to be going about ensuring that, especially in the workforce, I'm sure this will happen, people will be able to utilize agents from a personal standpoint as well, but especially within the workforce, how are we making sure that they're a good employee?
That is the question. And you see, that's what most people forget to ask. So, things that you need to think through because they're a good employee. First, you need to give them access to data that they need, but not open access. So, a lot of people forget that. So, like if I was hiring an engineer, I would give he or she access to the code base so they can make changes or to be able to do testing or documentation. I wouldn't give them access to financials or HR records. But a lot of people, when they bring an agent in, like OpenClaw, we saw this mistake over and over and over again, where they're like, oh, it's an agent. I'll just give it access to everything. Well, you would never do that to an employee, right? Yeah. You would restrict what they do. So I think thinking of them as an employee is very powerful. And then the way you train them also has to be done like an employee. Some people think, oh, I'm going to train my agent and then I'm done. And then it just goes. Well, you don't do that with an employee, right? Because things change, your product changes, the way you market changes. And so for a person keeps learning. And the way an agent does that is you feed it, you have to train it in different types of data. So for example, for my book, I wrote an agent for the book. And I wanted to feed it all my new research from the Digital Economist. I'm the chair of the Applied AI group. Wanted to feed it my Forbes articles. I'm a Forbes contributor. And I do that on a weekly basis because otherwise the agent doesn't get smarter, doesn't continue to learn. And so just like an employee has to be trained or enabled, you have to train your agents as well.
Yeah. Well, I think especially for those first 90 days, like because usually when an employee's onboarded, that first 90 days is the difference between, okay, do they maintain their standards? Do they live in alignment with the culture, or do they go off track? And is their momentum not built? Are they not achieving the goals? Is having those guardrails, specifics that they need to be achieving in that first period of time. But more importantly, like whenever I'm talking with someone about this, specifically on the development of a team member standpoint, is you should be having a weekly meeting at least with that person and asking the questions like, okay, what went well over this last week? What mistakes were made? Where did you fall short? What are you finding challenging? What are we going to do differently over this next week? And then, okay, what support is needed in order for the growth to occur that needs to happen in order to be aligned? And I think it's smart to be thinking about each agent as an employee that has a specific role, that we continue to make sure that they're getting the information and the data they need to be able to do the job correctly, right?
So important that you think about it that way. And I love the way that you phrase that because, if you have an agent, one of the things that I'm seeing is that, and this is quite interesting, it's kind of a flip. You would think almost that a technology person would do the best job at an agent, but it's actually managers and leaders who are doing the best job at developing these agents that are used as teammates.
That's interesting.
For the very point you just said to me, right? Which is, if you're a manager, you're going to have a one-on-one. If you're a manager, you're going to ask your employee, what else do you need? If you're a manager, you're used to doing that. Whereas if you're a coder, you're probably an individual contributor and you're not used to asking those questions. And so your agents aren't quite as good. So that's actually a flip that I'm seeing, is that people with domain knowledge are actually better at this than just technical people.
I haven't thought about it in that way. Mm-hmm. But that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because if you've got the skill set and have for however many years worked with people, it's about translating that across. So, okay, how does someone in a manager role or a leadership role develop that skill set to be able to, how does it transfer across? Is it basically exactly the same, or what are some of the things that you suggest?
I mean, right now it's the same in the way that you lead a team. But, one of the other 7 things that we talk about is that most of the success that we're seeing with AI today comes when people focus on leadership and the team, not just the technology. And so a lot of people today, if they fail at an AI project, that MIT study that said 95% of Gen AI projects fail, they were focused on the technology side. They didn't include the leadership team, the people, the change management. And that's really where I think the rubber meets the road, is people being successful looking at that leadership. And so part of that is, even as a leader, you can't just do it exactly as you do it today. You're going to ask different questions. So for example, at my company, we decided to create an agent for our customer support function. We could have just said, oh, this is the way we do customer support today. Let's automate that. But I think the change is, okay, now we can rethink completely how we do customer support. Let's think about it. If we had had AI as a teammate from the very beginning, what would we change? What would we do differently in that scenario? And so when we designed our customer support agent, we thought that way. How would this be different? So for example, we're a startup. We want to do 24/7 support because we have 4.8 million customers. So to cover every time zone would be kind of crazy for headcount. So what we did was we had the agent really work in time zones that we didn't cover. That was one thing that we did differently. And then we also said there are some times where certain people want a personal touch. Our top customers, our whales. And so we really constructed our AI agent around those boundaries, pretending like we were starting from the very beginning and crafting what we wanted to do. And I think that steps you up from being a manager to being a leader. And that's where we're seeing most of the success. In fact, there was a recent study that just came out, and it showed that if executives in a company are users of AI, that the company actually does 3.2. I don't know how they calculated 3.2, but 3.2 times better than if the leadership or managers don't use AI. And the reason is that, with AI, if you don't really understand it, it's hard to give direction. It's hard to figure out the right questions to ask. It's hard to give advice on how you manage an agent. And so the companies where all the way up and down the chain are using AI, those are the most successful.
It makes sense again because you're leading by example for one, and you're showcasing and demonstrating how it actually works, right? If you're just expecting someone lower down to do something and you're not actually privy to how that actually occurs, then you don't even know what to be saying in order for the growth to occur and the productivity to improve. And
For sure.
Fascinating.
And in fact, the other interesting thing that came out of the study was the fact that the employees in a company, when they use AI, they trust AI about, one in every second try, because there's lots of hallucination that happens. They have to double check it or reorchestrate it, recast the boundaries. But executives trust it 6 times more.
Really?
Yes, which is
Why is that?
fascinating. Well, I have a couple theories. I don't know if they're right because the study just came out, so I haven't had a chance to dig into the why. But I was thinking that maybe because executives are trying to move fast, so they're just accepting the answer or trusting the answer. The second thing is maybe they don't know the details. So maybe they don't know that they're getting 95% of the answer, and they need the other 5% to really make it work, or they're getting 80% of the answer and they need the other 20% for it to work. So those are 2 of my theories. I don't know. Do you have any?
One could be as well that, okay, are they actually, from a leadership standpoint, better at prompting, giving instruction, because they maybe have the skill set and know how to ask the right question?
Could be.
Maybe there's something there. I'm really interested to find out when, like, as that understanding comes out, because if we are trusting things that we shouldn't be, or we're not trusting enough what we should be, either side of that is not a great outcome.
That's right. And in fact, I was in a session this morning. Amy Webb she's an amazing futurist. I love her stuff. And one of the things that
we had one of her team on the show yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Sam. Sam Jordan.
Well, she did a great job this morning. She had a funeral for her trend report. She's changing her trend report that she's done for 14 years or something into her storm watch report. So I thought that was pretty cool. But one of the things that she said today is right. She said, we don't want to develop the next generation of helpless employees, where that next generation depends on ChatGPT or Claude to answer their question for them. And it was fascinating. The other day, I asked my daughter a question and she goes, well, let me ChatGPT it. And I was like, no. I want to know what you think.
Yes.
I don't want to know what ChatGPT thinks. What do you think? And so I thought it was interesting that if you get too dependent on the tool, what happens then, right?
Yeah.
And then I was reading another report where they said, maybe the future, let's say the future of dating. If we're both wearing glasses, the new meta glasses where I can identify you, it knows my history, what I posted on Facebook and everything. And what if, we're having dinner and everything is prompted to me in the glasses, right? Laugh now, smile now, tilt in now. How much of that is really authentic versus we're creating a generation that's helpless, that needs to be prompted themselves to do something. It was fascinating because they had this little video where there's a man and a woman on a date and the guy's got the glasses on and she tells a joke and it pops up, laugh now, smile now, tilt your head. And it's possible that could happen if we're not really careful, right?
It absolutely is. I see it as absolutely one of the roads we could go down if we're not intentional about how we utilize it. And yeah, I think about, when it comes to, there was a study out of MIT last year that showed, and it was students doing an essay paper. And there were 3 groups. The first is no help whatsoever. The second was search engine help, so things like Google. The third was LLMs, so ChatGPT and so on. And the third group, the AI group in that way, the generative AI group, retained the information much less. And it makes sense because if you haven't done any thinking in order to come to your conclusion, you haven't developed the ability to think. You haven't developed the ability to think creatively or be curious about the answer, to wire yourself in a way, okay, this is why I think that way. And that could absolutely happen when it comes to somebody feeling helpless. There is something really rewarding about developing our own identity in a way, like our own thinking, our own belief systems. And if we lose sight of that, we lose, I think, partly what makes us human. And I think there's such beautiful opportunity and ability to be able to maximize human potential through the utilization. I know you talk a lot about amplifying human potential. I think that's how we've got to be thinking about this, is how do we amplify? How do you think about then the information that we should allow to be outsourced so we don't necessarily remember? Because I don't know about you, but I'm guilty as charged with this. I can't repeat right now. My wife is sitting just over to the side here. I can't say what her phone number is. And that's, but like back in the day, everybody knew everybody's phone number because, you had to remember it. You didn't have anywhere to document it. And so I'm going to have to continue to try and remember it. But I've got a general idea, but I'm guilty of that. And because it's outsourced, because I don't need to know it in a certain moment. And that has freed up maybe space for other things, as long as we're, again, intentional about how we utilize that space, which I think is another conversation, because so many people are filling that up with stuff that isn't best use of our time, like scrolling through social media, for example. So how do you go about thinking about what do we allow to be let go of? What do we pursue in order to ensure that we're not becoming helpless, but it becomes helpful?
So for me today, and this might change over time, right? Disrupt yourself. But anything for me that's repetitive, that I have to do over and over and over again, and I already figured it out. So for example, I wrote an agent to go through my WhatsApps after a conference like this, because so many people I give out my WhatsApp to, and they'll ping me and they'll say, hey, Sandy, can we meet? Can we do a meeting? And I was looking, I just went to Davos, and Davos has amazing people. How many people I missed because I just didn't have the time, or I didn't take the time to put them on the schedule. So now I have an agent, because that's really repetitive, right? It's going through the list, and it's where people ask for meetings, putting a meeting on the calendar, right? For me, that's repetitive, something that I can have someone else do for me. So I think anything that you can repeat, rinse and repeat, I think works really well. I think, if you also things that computers are really great at, like coding. I think that's why coding has been the very first skill set that AI has taken over.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to watch what's happened, because now that I can code, I don't need an engineering team to code. Now I can just say, hey, I want an app that looks like this. So, for example, for Valentine's Day, I posted a survey, and it was like a 10-question survey about how much you love AI. And the interface and I did everything with Claude. I use Claude Cowork. And that thing went viral. And people were pinging me going, who did this for you? Who did the user interface? And I was like, Claude did.
Yeah.
And so I think something like that. I came up with the idea. The idea was my idea to do the survey, to have 10 questions, to have it be about loving AI on Valentine's Day. But Claude then executed my idea. So that's other places that I'm seeing happening now too. Like the whole business is changing, whereas before, I think the power was in someone who could code. Like if you look at Silicon Valley and you think about people who are very successful, they're mostly technical founders. I think that's going to switch. I think we're going to start seeing what I call domain founders, people who really understand the problem set, who've fallen in love with the problem and now can code it for themselves. So this was one of the other items that I have in my top 7. And an example, great example, is Anthropic held a hackathon. So Anthropic is the owner of Claude. So they produce Claude. And they had, I think it was like 133,000 people. I might be off on the number that participated in the hackathon to win it. And third place winner was a cardiologist.
Yeah,
His name is
right.
Michael. I got to interview him. And the fascinating thing was he had never coded before. Obviously, he's smart because he's a cardiologist, or I hope he is. But what he said was, he goes, people come in, they have a heart attack, they have stroke. A lot of people come in by themselves. They forget their aftercare instructions. And so time and time again, people would get in trouble because they would forget that I said, do this, don't do that. And so he wrote an app with Claude Cowork to do just that.
To solve that specific problem.
And he
Smart.
said, he goes, and I love this word. He said, I'm in love with this problem because it's hurting all my patients.
Wow.
I know the problem really well. I know what they need. And so he coded it up. He ran third place.
Wow.
And there were, I don't know if you heard, but there was a lot of people who said, wait a second, he's not technical. He can't win a hackathon. But here he is. He's like third place winner of the hackathon. I think that is going to be the new norm. People who really understand the problem are going to be the ones who can code it up super fast, get it out in the market. And I think those will be the ones who win.
Well, I wonder then, this is fascinating to me. I wonder how many problems are going to get solved.
So many more.
Because you have this insane number of people all over the world, billions of people around the world that know specific problems intimately.
Yep.
That haven't previously had the skill set to be able to solve that problem because they would have needed funding, for example. They would have needed tech skills. They would have needed other people around. And here you have someone who's never done that and come in and execute that. That's fascinating stuff.
So I think it's going to make all of us founders. I think we're all going to be founders of something.
Yeah.
I was talking to a chef the other day. They were reading my LinkedIn post about artificial intelligence, and he got on my calendar and he gets on and he introduces himself as a chef and everything. And I'm like, are we supposed to be talking like you're a chef? Like I have nothing to do with being a chef. He goes, no, I wrote this solution and I wanted to ask you about it. I was like, really? I go, do you code? No, I use Claude, just like you said. And so think about that. So a chef is going to be a founder of a software company because he understood the problem. Here's a cardiologist who's going to be the founder, or I guess now is a founder of that software problem. So I think that's what we're going to see. Everybody's now a founder. And we're going to shift, I think, from software companies to whatever the domain is company, right? I think that's what it's going to happen.
When it comes to, use that example, the cardiologist, third place at the hackathon, created this piece of software. How, and whether it's here now or at some stage in the near future, how does that go from, okay, I've created this solution to the problem, to then it being an actual thing that's utilized by people? Because I think there's a gap between the two, right? There's still stuff that has to be done in order for this to be actually utilized and proof of concept. Not only that, but people actually then pay to utilize it, or however that's done. Where are we at with that in evolution here?
So I think that it's really, again, an interesting question, because what we're seeing is people are creating these solutions, they're testing the waters with them, and then if it sticks, they're then going out and hiring coders who can then help them with the back end piece of the solution. Now, maybe over time, Claude will be able to do that too. And this is why, everybody was so worried that we're going to kill the software engineering industry. But what's actually happening is the number of software engineers are going up. Why? Because of what you just said. Now, everybody has the ability to solve a problem, and all these people want to solve a problem. And so even coders, like at my company, they're now like using Claude to create features. And then, these are features that were in a roadmap for years. Now Claude can kick them out like that. But now they have so many new ideas. They still need more coders. And so the number of coders isn't going down as projected. It's actually going up.
Well, this makes sense with
fascinating.
it is fascinating. I guess the coders that are going to go obsolete are the ones that are, going to charge, for example, for an entire start to finish, when no, there's going to be a part of your process that's already done. And it's going to mean that by the sounds of it, then it's going to take you less time to execute on a specific app, for example, a specific piece of software, which then enables you to go and maybe it's doing other pieces, or maybe there's multiple projects that you're working on. And that there's something that has been said throughout history that, certain jobs go extinct, but it creates new ones.
Yes.
And that, what is it? That just I don't know what the exact number is, but let's say it's like half of or however many whatever percentage of the jobs that will be in 10 years' time haven't even been created yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's so true. And, as you're looking at creating solutions for these new problems, it's going to be interesting to see that the people, I think, with the vision and with the ideas and the strategies are going to be the ones that are going to be winners. It's not going to be taken over. I don't think so. Although I listened to a presentation this morning that was all gloom and doom. Like, we're all going away. We're all going to be sitting around. We won't be doing anything. I don't think so, because I think all the ideas so far have come from humans that got the thing going. And so I think that that's going to continue. The ideas, the vision, if that's your superpower, I think that you're going to be in a really good position or a really good place to make it in the future for sure.
What was the worst case that the doom and gloom person this morning went
my gosh.
through?
So it was like we're all going to be on a universal paycheck.
Okay.
Because agents are going to be in the background. They're going to be doing everything for us. They'll be negotiating and building, and whole factories will be run by them, and they won't need humans. And so what do we as humans do? So I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean,
so
I guess it could go that way, but I think it could.
Well, do you see then what was mentioned in that presentation? Let's take two parts to that, because there's the stuff that currently is done by many humans, that much of that will get automated, like from a factory standpoint. That's just a matter of time. Robotics are going to be much, much, much faster. A lot of those are already in many factories and other manufacturing facilities. And so I would agree that a lot of the stuff that is today's jobs
will be different.
Yeah, will be different. Yeah. And the second part is, okay, what do we do? Well, what do we do? And it's going to be universal basic income, and we're going to be sitting around and, trying to find meaning in what we do and struggling to find a piece of identity or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That to me is based on the current state of the world, as in these are the current things that are in place, versus being, well, what could we create?
Yeah, it's
what
true.
What problems could help be solved? And
Yeah, it's kind of like another person I was talking to today, she said, my mom was in a typing pool, and typing pools are no longer, obviously.
What was a typing pool?
Well, an executive would say, hey, I'm going to dictate this letter.
Got it. Yeah.
And it would be sent to a typing pool where, different people would type up whatever it was and then give it back to them because there were no computers.
Yep.
And then she said her mom moved from a typing pool to being, chief of staff with a computer. And then she was doing it on the computer. Well, then most of her job went because then everybody started doing their own mail, their own stuff. So then she moved out of that to something else. So she kept morphing herself, right? So for example, one of my friends, her daughter is in college and she just asked me to do a recommendation for her daughter. Her daughter is going to be this summer a robot trainer.
No way.
Now, would you have ever thought like a year ago that someone's daughter from college could be a robot trainer? So robots, learn from world models, not LLMs. They learn by watching and seeing what you're doing. And so her daughter, she's so excited because her daughter's going to be teaching a robot how to fold clothes, how to do dishes. And she's like, I can't wait to see this because I'm going to tell her to practice in my home before she goes to work. But that's what she's going to be doing because robots learn by seeing someone more than, because that's not a digital input, right? But that job would never have been there. I don't even think a year ago.
Yeah.
Definitely not 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's a brand new job, right?
It's just wild to think about what's coming. It reminds me, I think it was my grandma on dad's side of the family. We grew up on a farm in Australia and they were part of the telephone exchange. And so they had that set up in a part of the house where we grew up in, as I understand it, as kids. And where she was responsible for taking out this and then plugging it into the next so that the next person had the phone call. And obviously that's no longer, it's long since gone. But those that are able to continue, use the word morphing. I think that's a good word. It's morphing into that next version of yourself in a way, and new skill sets, new ways of what.
And so that's the new thing. I mean, to me, I think people ask me, what's the number one skill I need to have? And I think the number one skill everybody needs to have is curiosity and this continuous learning. So I used to work at Amazon Web Services. It was one of our leadership principles. And as I'm following the new world, like if you're not continuously learning, 6 weeks ago, OpenClaw came up. If you're in AI now and you don't know what OpenClaw is, you're like, no one's going to listen to you because you have to know, you have to play with it. You have to know what it is. And it's changing like this. And so I think that being curious enough to ask questions and really understand is going to be that skill set that everybody needs to acquire. Because, there are some people who hate change, right? You know them. What was that old book? Oh, Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you ever read that book.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Who Moved My Cheese? Because it was for people who didn't like change. They wanted everything to stay the same. Our world is changing so fast right now that those who don't love change are going to be left behind.
Yeah. And it's only going to speed up. I think Ray Kurzweil was the one that said, I think it was maybe last year or 2 years ago, that the estimate of that if you're alive today, if you're 10 years old today, that by the time you're 60, so 50 years time, that you'll experience a year's worth of change in just 11 days. And that would make sense, that the rate of change that's here and upon us. So that one of the ways that I like to think about that is of just trying to grasp just how much change is coming, that if we think that now is fast, like that is not even close to what is coming. And I think about it like with self-driving cars. Let's use this example. Coming out of pickleball, where I play downtown here in Austin, on 2 occasions now, the Robotaxi and Waymo, self-driving facilities here in Austin, Waymo and Robotaxis have blocked my exit from the car, from the garage, from the parking garage. So it's got the other stuff, down. But as far as me being able to exit out, one time I was able to just get around, but the other time, and there's another person, like the passenger is sitting there, the person that's in the car is sitting there, and the Robotaxi is in front of or behind these other cars, but all just waiting to go. But all those cars are parked, right? And so, it was frustrating for me. Now, it's only a small thing, but as the complaint, maybe I put in a complaint, for example, to say, hey, this is what's happening. And what isn't able to be, what is that able to happen then is, well, not only does the robotaxi or Waymo or whatever fleet it is learn how to do that differently, it then will not only be able to do it for that parking garage, but then also be able to do it for every parking garage, because then it maps it, right? Yep. And not only can that vehicle do it, but every single vehicle in the entire organization can do it. And not only can it do it, it does it. And it does it immediately. And if I think about like that, it is, well, that is like however many, 7 billion of us, that every single conversation that every single one of us is happening at any single moment, that every single other person knows it, and not only knows it, but executes on it.
Yeah.
And that kind of has me like grasp it a little bit, I think, as to just how rapid this change is going to be. Because us as humans, I don't know about you, but like there's different times where I know something, but I don't necessarily execute it on it straight away, right? It takes me a few goes, takes me a few right rounds around and go, yeah, made that mistake again. Oh, I thought I learned that one the previous time, right? It takes time. And so that level of curiosity is vital. What are some of the other things that are important? Because as change speeds up, how are we going to either stay ahead, keep up, feel that we're able to manage ourselves in this state of rapid change?
Well, one of the things I find fascinating about this technology is that you can actually use the technology to learn about the technology. So, for example, I was doing a podcast in another facility like this, and the camera busted, and I only had a certain amount of time. I had to be in and out. And the guy was like, I don't know what to do. The camera doesn't work. And so I was like, well, let's ask Claude, let's ask ChatGPT, Let's see what we can do. So we actually put in a question in, and it said, hey, can you show it to me? So we actually videoed what was happening, and it fixed it like that.
Yep.
You can't think of another technology that's been like that, right? Mobile, cloud, IoT, augmented reality. So now you can actually use the tool to learn.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like people in my company will come to me and they'll say, Sandy, I don't know how to do this. And I'll say, well, have you gone to Claude? Have you asked, asked for what are the steps to do it? And so I think, again, that's part of this learning and being creative.
In that way, we're hybrid already, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And then the other interesting thing to me is I'm a big fan of Anthropic and Claude.
Right.
And Anthropic just put out a 33-page book on how to create skills. So, skills are what's used for your agents.
Right.
And the skills can help make the agents much more effective, right? So let's say you have an agent that does event planning. Some skills you could give it is how to create an agenda, how to invite guests, how to get the right speakers, right? So you can have these skills that are there. I find skills really helpful, so I really wanted to learn. But Anthropic created a document. So what I did was I took the document, I fed it into Claude Cowork, and I said, can you create me an app from this? Like, I don't want to read this document. I just want to be taught how to do it like real time. And so it turned around and it created an app for me to create skills. So I was like, man, why didn't Anthropic think about that? And I'm thinking that's the way we're going to have to start thinking. It's not, okay, normal would be do a document. But the new world is create an app. Like, why would you ever put a document out there? And so I think, and I learned from doing that. I learned more about AI because I created an app from their document. And I think that's going to be the new skill set. In fact, I even think, like, if you think about your LinkedIn profile in the future, I don't think you're going to have skills on it. I think it's going to list your agents. I think it's going to say, Sandy has these 5 agents, or Brittany has these 5 agents, or I think that's what's going to be on your LinkedIn profile in the future. It's going to be your skills that are represented as agents.
What about from a trust standpoint? Because if we have agents doing work in the background, we kind of know what they're doing, but we don't at the same time. how do we build trust? And does it start small with areas that, right, you don't need my bank account details, right? Or we put a limit on it, for example, a certain amount, just like we would with maybe an employee. How do we go about building trust over time? And for someone maybe who's listening that struggles trusting people, let alone agents.
Yeah. Well, this was another one of my top 7 was I predict that by 2027, which is just next year, that the only agentic systems that will survive are those that provide ways that you can provide boundaries, that you can provide access in a correct way, that you can provide identity to. And that's why I think that a whole set of governance issues, whether it's just for us as people or for companies, I think that those are going to become requirements. Most people right now have been putting them off. So for example, a large company took OpenClaw, which if you don't know OpenClaw is a agentic system. It was created by an individual who was the first, I guess he would probably be the first individual who created by himself a unicorn company because it was purchased by AI.
Yep.
And it's this really cool agentic system. So you can create agents like personal assistants and that sort of thing. Absolutely, positively no security on it. And so one of the larger companies, one of their employees plugged it into the system at work. And I started getting calls. I got 5 calls in one day from this company. And on the 5th call, I actually answered the phone and I said, is this Moltbot? Moltbot is the name of the tool. And it said, yes. And I said, please don't call me again. Okay. Shouldn't be on your list. I called the company and they're like, oh my God.
They had no idea.
We've been getting calls from customers all day long. We were wondering like, what is going on? And now you helped us solve it. So some employee installed it and it just went wild. So I think the best companies are going to have an identity on agents. So they'll know who. They'll have access for the agent. So back to our example before, if I'm a finance employee, I can only do certain things. They'll give limits to different agents and they'll check them, right? It's not just they'll give a limit. So there was another large company who created an agent to approve purchase orders up to $5,000. The agent figured out, why am I doing $5,000? I want to do 50. It increased its limit to 50.
Oh, damn.
Then it increased its limit to $5 million. And the way the company found out was the CEO saw a purchase order come through for $5 million, and he was the only one who could do purchase orders of that level. And so he called his team in and he's like, how in the world did this happen? And it turned out the agent had given itself another bump in permissions. So they had given access, but they didn't restrict it enough. So they had to figure that out. And then the third thing they're going to have to figure out is, today AI drifts. So if it keeps running, it'll drift away from your original attention, or it can drift away, cause hallucinations, that sort of thing. I'm seeing a lot of companies pop up to handle that. They'll go back and they'll retest for it. So for example, the military was trying to teach new pilots how to identify, I'm going to get it wrong, but like an F-13 from an F-11 or whatever. And for some reason, the AI agent really liked the F-11. So when it started out, it was identifying correctly, but over time it started drifting to say, oh, that F-15, oh, that's an F-11, that F-13, oh, that's an F-11. And so there's now software that'll go in there and catch drift.
Right.
So it can retrain back to the original. So these are the types of things that we're going to have to start worrying about. People have been putting them off because they just want to move really fast. I think in 2027, starting now, but definitely in 2027, anybody who doesn't have that security or that ability to govern, set boundaries, is going to not be successful.
I wonder then how important, maybe a couple of things with this. One is data trails. So the ability to be able to see the work of what occurred, because I would think maybe if there have been certain guardrails put in place, is there going to come a time where either the software or the underlying LLM or whatever is being utilized is held accountable, potentially? Because if something, we're talking about something that could, an example of changing from $5,000 to $5 million, that within a space of 24 hours could be the end of many businesses.
Company. Yeah, that's right.
And so could there or would there be a time where that data trail is so important, because then being able to look back through that to be able to determine, okay, who was actually at fault here, and could those providers be held accountable for that?
So this is where there's a whole new area coming up called decentralized AI. A lot of people have been storing that in like a relational database, the log or the auditability trail, but some agents will go in there and change it. But on the blockchain, you have to have agreement to change something.
Yeah.
So someone can't just go in there and change a ledger. And so this is where you're seeing now the emergence of decentralized AI. So there's zero gravity, there's Sentinel that's coming out. I mean, there's all these new decentralized AI specifically for that. So you have an audit trail. So for example, I was working with one company and they were doing an actual audit, and they had used, I think it was ChatGPT to do the audit, and everything passed. Well, when the auditors showed up, they ran it again and it was different. And so there was no audit trail that when they saw that on, December 11th, that it was the same as December 17th. It should have been. It wasn't. But they couldn't even prove that that's what they saw on the 11th because they didn't have the audit trail. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more as people are using, because audit is another one of those, compliance is another one of those that people would like to delegate to someone else. It's not the funnest thing to do. And so that will be another area that people will have to look at for sure.
Yeah. The other one that I thought, as you were sharing as well, is the importance of backup. The importance to be able to restore versions, like whatever that version was, where if something occurs, that you catch it within a certain amount of time. Maybe it's a day, 7 days, 28 days, or maybe it's in 365, for example. Like I know even just purely from a Google Sheets standpoint of being able to restore versions of that when we've got other people in the team utilizing that to update certain data. Restoring the versions has been valuable. Same with the CRM. There's been certain updates where, all right, you know what, let's go back to the previous one because certain data, it wasn't as clean as what we thought it was. And so I could see backups being incredibly important as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And this is why right now too, we're also having a storage gap. I don't know if you've heard storage.
What's
storage is now, the ability where you store things. The storage is because they're trying to store now so many more things from AI. Storage is a big gap, just like compute and electricity is a gap.
The ability to be able to actually store the data that is being produced. Yeah. What's the solution to that?
Well, right now, of course, if you own stock in a storage company, your stock's been going up and up and up. So there's a ton of companies who are trying to spin up right now because storage hasn't been a thing for so long because you have clouds everywhere. And now a lot of people want to store their private data. They don't want that private data being used to train an LLM, right? We've heard all the stories about that. And so the demand for storage has gone up exceedingly. So they're going to have to figure out ways to store more data now. So there'll be more companies, I think, that'll come up in there. So as we talked about earlier, when one area goes away, another area grows, right? So right now we're seeing electricity being a big hot button, storage being a big hot button, GPUs. So there's all these other additional jobs that are popping up because of what's happening with artificial intelligence.
I wonder how much this puts the pressure on finding finally how we can get nuclear fusion working.
Maybe.
Right. Nuclear fission versus nuclear fusion, because nuclear fusion, it's the sun basically, as far as I'm definitely not expertise in this, but as far as I understand it, it's the reaction that happens within the sun. And so if we're able to have that, then all of a sudden we've got potential for infinite energy at very, very, very low cost. It seems that's what's going to need to happen at some stage.
Oh my gosh, there's so many people working on this. So there are people that are looking to put data centers in the ocean because it's cooler, because they need, so much electricity has gone to cool. This morning, I just talked to a guy. I was on a space panel outer space because I had done some work with space. And he said that they're now trying to build data centers in space
Yep.
because without gravity, it doesn't take as much electricity, et cetera.
When you got potential for being able to have the sun 24 hours
Yeah.
a day as well, and from a solar standpoint, for example, and that could maybe power that. Is that what they're thinking with that?
That's part of it. Yeah. And then there's also apparently when you're without gravity, there's something that the particles do differently that makes it speed up. So it's quicker.
It's quicker as well.
That's
They believe that even though it's out there, it'll be quicker.
I don't know if it's quicker to come down here,
gotcha.
but quicker in the I guess we wouldn't say in the cloud. I guess
it's not the cloud. It's like past the cloud.
I don't know.
Yeah, we got to come up with it. You got to coin a term for that, right?
But then think about quantum, right? Because quantum also
I was about
changes
to
the
ask
game.
that.
Yeah, quantum also changes the game. So now you can do training. I mean, training models is really where you get all the usage, right? It's not the execution; it's the training that costs the most. And so you can train faster with a quantum system, but then quantum also breaks all the cryptography. So now you got another problem on your hands. So
can you share at a high level? Do you have like some pretty solid understanding around quantum computing? And
I'm not a quantum expert at all. I just know this much.
Yeah.
I'm actually taking a class right now at MIT because I want to get smarter on what quantum is and what it's going to do. And because I think it's going to come faster than we think.
Yeah.
There is no, year 2000 that is going to be it's not a time limit. But I think as soon as quantum comes, the first person who gets it, it's going to break cryptography for cryptocurrency. It's going to break defense security. I mean, it's got a whole bunch of implications. There's a whole bunch of good, but there's also a potential whole bunch of evil. But I'm not the expert on quantum.
One of the good I would see is just the sheer amount of size that we would be able to store on such a smaller amount of piece. Because as I understand, the way that things are stored right now is on ones and zeros, and then quantum comes in and utilizing that, which is just mind-blowing to think about, that it can be in multiple places at the same time, which means it could then produce much more storage space than what would have otherwise been the case. And I'll probably get someone, reaching out saying that's completely wrong, dude. But it's somewhere along those lines, as I understand it, that the capacity is what I say when it comes to quantum computing is so much bigger than what we currently have, which makes sense if we only have two options of on or off, 1 or 0, versus a quantum which can have multiple options. Then that would make sense that we could have a large amount of storage. That's the one that I'm most looking forward to, just to be able to store, like even just from this podcast, all right? There's hundreds of gigabytes that occur as a result of, recording in 4K and with certain and multiple camera angles. And so just that one alone, right? Just to be able to have that, it'd be so good just to be able to store that on a little thing like this.
But not good if someone could break in and get everything from you, right? So there's pros and cons.
There really is.
The other thing that I just heard in Davos is, quantum was like the promise of quantum was that we could solve medical problems faster. We could solve financial issues faster. We could determine fraud better. Well, today, AI is actually doing all of that. And so now people are like, okay, so what do we need quantum for? And so I think that a lot of the big buzz use cases that people had used are now gone. They're gone to AI. I think now it's going to be about storage. I think it's going to be about speed of training AI systems, the ability to save electricity. I think that's going to be the next generation of what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about let's go from an agent standpoint. And let's talk about maybe some of the medical breakthroughs that could occur. Because, the way I think about this is, okay, the level of intelligence that we're at right now is PhD level for basically across the entire range of different educational, different disciplines. So that would mean then that we have the ability to basically have infinite amount of PhD students, PhD graduates working on problems 24/7, being able to test their hypotheses without having to actually spend money on a clinical trial, for example. That would say to me that, one, on the good side, that there are an insane amount of breakthroughs that are about to happen. And maybe on the not great side, that it could lead to things being produced that are not good for us as humans.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the challenges today that I'm seeing in healthcare is lack of data.
How
And
so?
let me tell you about this.
Yeah.
So, well, up until 1972, medical institutions were not required to have any women's data, any people of color data. And what they're finding is that, so the data they have is primarily data from white men.
Right.
And they're finding that there are differences, like not just little differences, like big differences. So I'll give you an example. There was an AI program that said, oh, we can just take your blood and we can now determine if you have liver cancer. And that is so different than what you used to have to do. You used to have to actually biopsy your liver to determine that. And people are like, wow, this is amazing. 77% accuracy, but it turned out it was 77% accuracy for men, white men.
Right, wow.
For women, it was 31% accurate. So now you've gone from 77 to 31. Yep. For anybody of color, it dropped down to 18% accurate. So now you've got a solution that you're like, wow, this is amazing to, you need a warning on it. Almost like the warning on cigarettes. Yeah. This may be dangerous for your health. Like, don't use this if you're a woman or if you're a person of color, because it's going to give you a false reading. And so Stanford University has actually now gone out since, it wasn't required that anybody use women before 1972. So now they've got a huge gap of research data. They were actually asking women to donate anonymously some of their healthcare records so they could build up the data so more of the AI systems could use it. If you think about AI today, AI gets trained on the digital piece, right? Because you can't really train on culture today or, like even our expressions today. There's so many things you can't train on. And in fact, the latest study said that what AI is trained on today that humans know is only 15%. Because think about all our knowledge. How much of it is actually written down and digitized?
Yeah.
Versus how much is culture, feeling, gut feeling, emotion.
The experiences that we've had that we haven't told. Yeah, the stories that we've gone. Yeah.
I mean, even think about, if you've lost someone, like I lost my grandmother and my grandfather, and I'm like, wish I had written more of their stories down. I wish I'd gotten them to record it. So those are lost forever, right? And so if you think about right now, what computers are trained on is 15% of the data. Now, when you get to world models and robots and humans, now they're going to watch us and they'll get more data. I don't know what percentage that'll be. But that is a gap. And for healthcare, some of that stuff matters, right? Like when you diagnose, I was just in New York with a group of healthcare entrepreneurs and founders, and they were telling me that the number one reason that you get misdiagnosed as a doctor is the doctor doesn't have access to all of your healthcare data. And some of that is mental. Some of it is, what's your dental records? What's this? But some of it is your positively. Like, are you a positive person? Are you not? Right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's not written down. And so how do you capture that data so that when you have all these PhDs working 24/7, they're working off the right data? Because as you and I know, if you got the wrong data, you're going to get the wrong solution. One of the funniest things I did at IBM is we kept trying to tell CEOs, you need the right data. It's not just about having a lot of data. It's about having the right data. And so we decided to do a test. We loaded into Watson machine learning 33,000 romance novels. So only romance novels, 33,000. So 33,000 books, that's a lot of data. But then we showed Watson a picture of two sumo wrestlers. And we said, caption this. Now, was the caption right? Absolutely not. It talked about them, romantically courting each other when they're getting ready to kill each other. So it wasn't because we didn't have enough data. We didn't have the right data. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen in healthcare. I don't think we have all the data yet.
How long does it take to get that then for those different people? Yeah, different groups of people.
I don't know. I know Stanford's just kicked off this project for women. I don't know if they've kicked off anything for people of color. I also know I was just at Davos, the World Economic Forum, and there was an African group there, and they're creating an LLM. And what they're doing to train it is they're going out to all the tribes, and they're having the tribes with a voice tell all their stories and all their history.
Wow.
And so what they're trying to do is increase the number from 15%, adding in some of the culture that's unique to Africa. Some of the stories, the other pieces of being a human, they're trying to get that into an LLM. And as far as I know, maybe one of your listeners could correct me, they're the only ones today that I know that are trying to do that, actually embed that cultural element in it from stories and talking to people to train that LLM.
It's fascinating thinking about it like that because, back in thousands and thousands of years ago, the only way was through story. The only way we learned was through story. It's why storytelling is so incredibly powerful. It's why it fires off certain parts of the brain. And then there were, the ability to be able to draw and, it's then sharing things on those caves, for example. And then slowly but surely, the ability to be able to document has come over time. And yeah, the question is, okay, how do we capture that? Because, one of the reasons why, I back in 2021, I went through a process and I spent an hour a day. I'm still do it, but I've still got to be more diligent about this because there's continual stories, right? But there's an hour of storytelling a day and writing and documenting. And there's a storybook, well over 100 stories from my life, some of the big defining moments. And when it comes to story, okay, what neurochemicals am I aiming to release in somebody's brain when I tell this? If I'm on stage, for example, or in a coaching session and aiming to guide them in a specific direction. Okay, what's that opening piece? How do we have the progressive complications right down to a resolution to be able to make sure they get the insight? And it was this insight that I had, which was I'm not treating the lessons that I've learned, the wisdom that I've gained and the pain that I've gone through and the mistakes that were made with the love and respect that it deserves.
Yeah.
Right. Because here it is that if I'm gone today, then all of that is just gone, like you mentioned with your grandparents. And unless we have that documented in some way, shape or form, yeah, the wisdom that was gained throughout that time is now just gone forever. So if we're able to, especially you mentioned like tribes in Africa, for example, okay, what happens as things continue to develop and maybe some of those cultural norms are lost?
Yeah.
If we're able to protect those, that's an incredible thing for people to be able to stay true to themselves in a way as to where they came from and understand that.
And if you think about it, originally you had talked about there's 7 billion people in the world. Only half of those today have access to the internet.
Half.
Only half.
Is it really?
Only half. So what about the other half? Like, what is their story? What is lacking in being digitized that you could train an LLM on? So there's still so much more. I mean, people almost are like, next year humans are going to go away. It's not going to happen. There's just still too much out there. And in fact, one of the new trends that I'm seeing as well is popping up of in real life groups or even doing podcasts in real life and community. So it was interesting. South by Southwest did like the number one sessions for this time in 2026. And they were showing what was the number one sessions in 2025. Huh. And the number one voted on sessions in 2025 were all AI, 100% AI. Yep. In 2026, number one was community.
Was it really?
Number one was community. It ousted AI. I think that's very fascinating. I think what it tells us is, right now, even though we have all these tools and everything, and AI companions are still the number one used tool out there.
Because really?
Yes, number one, over ChatGPT or Claude or anything else, AI companions. And so that tells us that, we as a human society in 2026 are lonelier than we've ever been before.
Yep.
And so what are we looking for now? It's not an AI agent. We're looking for connection and community. It's why these events like South by Southwest are so powerful, because you get to meet people in real life. and connect with them. So you're starting to see now a lot of groups pop up for these, I don't know if you've seen it, summits or retreats with small number of people that you can really connect with. I think we're going to see more and more of that, or building communities being a big competitive advantage.
I couldn't agree more and wouldn't be at all surprised, because I think we have to go through sometimes contrasting experiences where it was one way, now it's this way. Oh shit, we don't want it that way. We kind of come back and we kind of balance out. Like, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to take this and bring it into here.
Yeah.
Because that trend of loneliness started well before AI.
COVID.
Right. It was COVID, and it's social media even before COVID as well.
That's right.
And so it's been growing over time. Same with the mental health challenges around depression, anxiety, suicide, and each of these pieces, it is getting worse. And I'm optimistic for this, but again, only if we're intentional about how we utilize this. I wonder, because when we talk about community and being in person, in real life experiences, I do think they will become more and more valuable, because it's the last thing we really know to be real. Okay. And with things getting so much more realistic when it comes to deep fakes and other pieces, that it is, it's going to be increasingly like, what's real, and coming to being an in-person experience, I think is going to be really important. Where I'm somewhat concerned, and yet still it can still be great, but somewhat concerned as well, is with the AI companion side of things. I've shared this on the podcast before. As a man, one of the ads that comes and pops up on my feed from time to time on social is AI companions. And the AI companion is a beautiful woman, and she starts off and says, "I don't exist, but I will do whatever you want." Right? And tell me your greatest fantasies. Tell me this, tell me that. And it's preying, to me at least, it seems it's preying on those that are vulnerable. It's preying on those that maybe don't have community and believe that this is the way to get my need for connection. I'm very concerned when it comes to that.
And think about that for kids.
Yeah, exactly.
So the number one reason why children under the age of 18 die is suicide. For the first time ever, is suicide. And if you look and dissect why people committed suicide, the number one reason for kids is loneliness. And so a lot of them are now turning to AI and AI companions. And in fact, I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she said the other day her daughter was walking outside, and she had the phone on speaker, and she was talking to someone and asking them like what she should wear to a school dance, what she should do about this teacher or whatever. Her daughter came inside and she said, "Oh, were you talking to your, Sally, your best friend?" And she goes, "Oh no, I was talking to a chatbot. She was talking to Grok." And she said, "Wow, you're asking Grok all those questions?" And she goes, "Yeah, like it's almost my best friend." And she said that shook me to the core. Because, she and I were talking when we broke up with our first boyfriend, we called our mom. Like we went to our mom, we got a hug.
Yeah.
Now are kids going to go to a chatbot or an AI companion for that? And if so, are we going to be replacing or teaching that next generation that it's not about connection with humans, it's about connection with AI? I mean, think about it. I don't know about you. We know some of our neighbors. We don't know all our neighbors. And think about in the past. Like in the old days, you knew every neighbor because you depended on them. You needed them. And now you don't really have that community with your neighbors and other people. And so this is the number one fear I have with AI, that it's going to take over that companionship area.
Well, and this comes
more than anything else.
Yeah, and this comes full circle what we were talking about earlier when it came to the employee side of do they become helpless, right? And I think I do wonder, will there need to be certain guardrails put in place? Well, I know that there'll need to be certain guardrails put in place, but does this come a time over in Australia right now has been a ban put on social media for kids under the age of 16?
Yeah, I was just at South by Southwest Sydney.
Oh yeah, gotcha.
And everybody was bragging about that. They thought that was great.
Yeah, and I know, I'm not sure which country it is over in Europe, but there's a country over in Europe that's taken that and I believe implemented it there or is about to implement it as well. And so does it come to a time where for those that are vulnerable in that way, because their brains are still developing, that there are certain things put in place to ensure, that they don't become in some ways helpless. Because when we think about, especially with the way that it is right now, from an AI companion, especially from that ad that I've gotten a few times, I'm like, it makes me a little sick. Like it's icky to me because I know what they're trying to do, and they're preying on a specific type of man, someone who doesn't have connections, someone who feels isolated, someone who doesn't maybe have social skills to be able to communicate and build community. And these are skill sets that are required. We are social creatures as humans. It's what's enabled us to survive for many thousands of years. And if we rip that away from the fabric of society, that's really concerning. And if we don't, the way that it's set up right now is, okay, I'm going to agree with everything that you say. I'm not learning how to disagree with somebody. I'm not learning how to have a candid conversation. I'm not learning how to communicate in a way that's real. I'm simply just getting what I need from something. Yep. That then to me would say that our level of resilience would shrink. That would make sense to me. If I'm not learning through mistakes being made, through bad ways of having a conversation, realizing, oh, that didn't feel very good. I wonder as well, I'm just thinking about this out loud now. So about 12 years ago, there was a song that I wrote about bullying and suicide, and it went well online. It reached many people around the world and reached every country, and kids in school projects and film projects and dance projects utilize it to help tell their story.
Oh, wow.
And in the comments, there's overwhelmingly it's people supporting each other and sharing, a bit about their story. And every now and then you'll get a troll coming through being an absolute ass. And I looked this up as to, well, why is that? What is it that would have somebody share something online that they would never even think of saying to somebody's face in person? And one of the things that I learned from that is that one of the reasons is because you don't get to see the other person's response. You don't get to feel bad as a result of seeing how you made somebody else feel as a result of your actions. And that, from a social standpoint, is what enables us to be and develop and become decent human beings, right?
Absolutely.
If we rip that away and we don't have the ability to be able to have those conversations and witness the response, then that's again, a slippery slope to me.
Completely agree. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is missing. In Scottsdale, where I live, they now have a school that in the first half of the school, they let you do self-guided learning with artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So that way, if you're a smart kid, then you can excel ahead. If you're struggling with a subject, you can stop and really try to understand it, not worry about, I'm being left behind. But the second half of the day, what they decided to do is they're teaching communication skills, financial skills, all the things that used to be taught actually in a home, which are now somehow being lost.
Or not taught in home.
Or not taught at home.
And all of a sudden there's a massive gap in education around those things.
And so they're combining the two, and they're getting great response because, one, it's allowing the self-paced learning, which is really good for kids who are either behind or ahead. But secondly, they're learning what I call how to live, like how to live as a real human. One of the interesting things that I learned this week, I was on a panel and we had a couple of Texas state senators and representatives, is they said that Texas just executed no phones at school.
Really? Awesome.
And the result of that, which is interesting to me, of course, they got lots of pushback at first, but it's Texas-wide. So then a school or a teacher can't be blamed or whatever, right? The parents can't get mad at them because they voted for it. But what they found is that the kids now are learning how to talk to each other, because instead of in between classes getting on your phone and texting and all that, or looking at reels, they're actually speaking to each other, talking to each other. And so there are unintentional positive consequences from taking away phones so that people couldn't cheat. They're actually having real community in a school. I don't know if you remember when you were at school, like at lunch, I would go and we would sit and talk at lunch.
Yeah.
And
going and playing out in the oval and enjoying, and you're constantly conversing.
But in fact, one of this Texas representative said that they had videos of kids at school at lunch, and there wasn't like any conversation. All the kids were on their phones.
Yep.
So they were sitting there eating their lunch. Everybody's on their phone. So now when they take away the phones, people are actually talking to each other, learning how to talk, learning to see the reaction and that sort of thing. So I do feel that things like that are really helpful and help you to kind of take back some of your humanity.
I'm really looking forward to seeing like something like that, how that then translates into when those kids develop into employees.
Adults.
Yep. Because if you're not able to, let's say, you're in sales and you're selling a high ticket item and you can't even look the person in the eye because it feels awkward, right?
Yep.
Like that's you ain't getting the sale, right? You're not getting the sale.
I know a couple of those type of people.
Right. It reminds me as well, there was a study, I've referenced this a few times on the podcast already, that there was a study that, I can't remember who did it, but it was reported by, I think, New York Times. And don't quote me on the exact numbers, but the kids were all addicted to technology. After 30 days, they had, for that 30 days, they had an hour a day they could use their device, and then the rest of the time was none at all. And there was a certain percentage, I can't remember what it is, but it was a sizable percentage of the kids, once they were finished up the 30 days, chose not to use the hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. By the end, they didn't want to use the hour. And so this goes to show that part of this is the addiction to the device, just like any substance, anything that we utilize, that once we get clear of that, we realize that there are so many richer experiences that we can have. And if we can be utilizing the technologies and the tools as exactly that, as tools, right, to enable us to get what we want to experience versus the tools using us to enable the companies to get what they want to experience, right, from a profitability standpoint. So I thought that's fascinating. And that I again, it's great to see, and I look forward to hearing the results. Did they talk about any of the results that they've experienced?
Well, they just started to say that communities had grown stronger.
They've just started to see the experience. Yeah.
I think you guys are from Texas. So apparently it just recently passed, maybe this school year or something. I don't know. Do you guys have kids?
We don't.
No,
so we're not sure on that. So,
but anyway, it just passed in Texas. So I am anxious to see. We're going to get together again next year. I am anxious to see the results of it.
Well, I hope they're going to report not only on the results of what they were maybe originally going to do, but like the unintended consequences as well.
And that's why they brought it up. They have, I guess you guys have in Texas, one of the strongest tech caucuses of all the states in the United States, because I guess different states, I guess New York and California and even, who was it? North Dakota came here to learn from you guys about your tech caucus. And that's what they're pulling together is a report on that. And there were some negative consequences too, like what were they saying? A group of students went to protest something and they walked like a mile and it started raining. Well, none of them had their phones because they did it during the school day, which is their right, their constitutional right to go and protest. So they were a mile away. It was pouring rain and nobody had their cell phone.
Right.
I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world that could happen. But I guess some of the parents were like, oh my gosh, my kid couldn't call me.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I think it was very positive.
Yeah.
And I really think that's I hope the states share what's working in them so that more states can do the right thing for kids.
Yeah.
Because with this whole AI thing coming, I think it's going to be hard for kids growing up.
Yeah.
I really do.
What do you think is going to be hardest?
Well, I was thinking about let's just say, robots. I was looking at the announcement today that another robot for taking care of, doing house cleaning and doing your dishes, which I really want, passed another test. So they're getting ready to be released, which was a big celebration. But then, I was thinking, okay, so that robot is in your home. Your kids are in your home. So it's learning, it's listening. And I'm just hoping that the kids' data is protected. I know everybody says it is, but is it really protected? Or would it be used against them one day? Or even I was thinking, what if you have a child and maybe that robot cleaner helper helps a child, let's say they're 3-year-old and they have to be helped to go to the potty. Visual, I mean, they can see, they can hear. I don't know, there's just lots of opportunities for hackers or for somebody to do
Yeah.
something wrong. So I'm worried about their privacy for one thing. On social media, at least my daughters never listen to me about, don't put that on social media. When they're young, they just don't think about it. Like, well,
Right.
is this going to be used against me? So I'm just nervous about that piece, like stuff that they don't want to be known, maybe even not knowingly collected by a robot or a humanoid or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm also worried, because robots learn from world models, which means watching and sensing what people are doing. Because I was thinking about our home. I think our home is a good home. So if a robot came in, they would see a loving family. But what if a robot came in and the family is abusive?
There are like dysfunctional pieces to it. Yeah.
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 So if a robot is going to copy, let's say the father is abusive to his son, is the robot then going to see that and say, oh, that's normal behavior? So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just concerned about a lot of things like that. And we're moving so fast. I'm wondering if we're really pausing to sit and think about the consequences.
That
I
makes
was at
sense.
CES this year, and the robots were like, they were playing tennis, they were dancing. And then we saw the police robots, like they're big and strong and powerful. And I just think we need to really be careful about what we're getting ready to unleash on the
Yeah.
world.
I saw there was the dancing? I think it was out of China. The dance of all the robots. Did you see that? And I know there was certain things that were being done to actually produce that, but just looking at the difference between 2025 to 2026, and just the stark difference. And I don't know, it was like I'm optimistic, and I looked at that and just gone, oh yeah, we're all doomed, right? It's just a matter of time. And, yeah. So there's both sides to it, because I look at the hope on the hopeful side of things. We were talking a bit about education before. For every kid who has different ways of learning, some who have learning difficulties, that all of a sudden could have an agent alongside them, helping them to become the greatest versions of themselves,
Yeah.
based on their learning style, based on their challenges, when a teacher didn't have the capacity.
Yeah. Too many kids in a
Right?
classroom. Yeah.
Or maybe the know-how,
Yeah,
right? To be
that's
able
true.
to know all of the different learning styles. That's I'd say probably not possible for a teacher to be able to do that. And so that has me from a hopeful standpoint. And yeah, for me, growing up in Outback Australia and having 11 people in my graduating class, like being able to provide access
Yeah.
to folks that wouldn't have otherwise had access. And you mentioned about if only half right now have access to internet. I have one more question about that then. How do we go about providing access to those who want/need it, that don't have current access, who maybe can't afford that access, where the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, that gap is going to grow exponentially faster and bigger?
This is a big concern I have.
Yeah.
And, I was looking at some of the numbers. So at CES, I always go because it's the latest and greatest technology.
Right.
And, you see exoskeletons that can help you to walk longer and faster. Like you don't even need to really sit down, Well, what if someone at South by Southwest had that exoskeleton on? They could go much farther than me, much longer than me, meet more people than me, collect more business cards than me. And then at CES, there are these beds, and the beds have AI in them. And it senses, like when you're lying on the bed, it senses your temperature or your discomfort, and it would move around. And they claim it gives you 30 to 40% better sleep. So now what if I can afford the exoskeleton, and now I can afford the $20,000 AI bed? Now I'm getting more sleep. So now I've got more capacity. And then, what if I can afford my AI glasses? And now I can identify you and I can relate to you and I can do things faster. I don't have to fumble around with my phone. Maybe 20% more capacity. So with money and having the glasses, the bed, the exoskeleton, maybe I'm 60 to 70% more efficient than you now.
Wow.
So does that even further, from the haves and the have-nots, because I can now augment myself, right? I can augment my own self with that capability. And then what if my work, whoever I work for, requires that I do that? Like, what if they require that I get the bed and I get the exoskeleton so I can walk around the building more? What if they require that? And then again, are there people who then couldn't take the job, or maybe who don't want to take the job because they know those devices are also tracking and keeping data? I do think that that's another thing we have to think about, is that will the disparity go even stronger? And then today there was this guy from MIT. He was doing the top trends in technology, and he was showing how in China, they were looking at your DNA, and they can now go in and splice one piece of your DNA and make you remember X% more.
Whoa.
It's very expensive, but some people in China are now having their DNA spliced, and you can even do it now in a baby. So when a baby's in a mom's womb, you can go in and take that slice out. So when your baby comes out, your baby's smarter. It learns faster. But again, it's very expensive. So does that mean that the wealthy will have smarter kids?
Right.
Because they're going to go in and they're going to splice that DNA. I mean, there's just so many things that could continue to create that divide between those who have and those who don't.
Are there any of like the 7 things that you mentioned in the presentation that you have? Is there anything in there relating to that, or any other things that we need to be thinking about then? Because it's wild to think about. I don't think we have the answers necessarily, but are there any other things that we need to be thinking about around that then?
Around the augmentation?
Yeah, that and with those 7 as well.
Yeah,
Anything that we haven't spoken about here?
I think on the human augmentation, I think, what people need to be thinking about is, does it really give you an advantage?
Yeah.
And is it something that you can afford? So, for example, on the bed, I was talking to one of the ladies who had created the bed, and she said that some people will go in debt, like the bed's $20,000, like it's basically the cost of a car. And they'll go in debt because they believe they need the sleep to perform. Like, what does that do? And so, I guess it's really thinking through what's really required for you. And in the future, I'm just not sure. Like, if you've got a group of people who are 60% more effective because of an exoskeleton and a bed and eyeglasses, what is that worth? And how do we make the universe more equal in that regard, right? So anyway, that is something I'm thinking about. I don't know if I have an answer for that yet, but I think it's something we have to think through and question in terms of what will happen. And then, I was thinking, like, again, if your company required it, like, would you do it? Like, if your company said, hey, we want you to have this bed because you're going to get better sleep and therefore you're going to be more productive for us.
Right.
Is that something that a company should be able to do?
Yeah. And is there a time that it gets where it becomes a little more normalized, where at the moment it seems outrageous almost that would be that, but we only have to look back a number of years to go, well, if you rocked up and said, I'm not going to use a computer.
Yeah.
And you're building relationships, even just as simple as LinkedIn, for example, and needing to utilize that to prospect, for example. And you go, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do it. I've got my Rolodex, I've got the phone, and I'm just going to call.
I'm done. Yeah.
Then you're probably going to be out of work pretty quickly, and that's normalized already.
Yeah, it could be.
And so this maybe is an extension of that, and maybe we just haven't gotten to a point yet where it's normalized.
Yeah.
Dunno.
Yeah. And it was funny because I was talking to Amy Webb about it.
Right.
And Amy's like, oh, I already have that bed. I was like, you do?
Yeah.
So you're already 30% more productive than me. Oh, no.
See, I wonder with this as well, though, is if we outsource in this way, kind of outsource our sleep quality in this example, where do we take responsibility for getting a good night's sleep, right? getting to bed early. I know for me, like I'm up at somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. I'm one of those just early morning people. I'm an early morning type. I know that about myself. And that means that I've got to be in bed nice and early the night before
Yep.
in order to do that. And it takes discipline to do that. And again, these are some of those skill sets, those attributes, those key character traits of ensuring that you're honoring what it is that you need. Because I think maybe those that are going to thrive the most are those that are utilizing these technologies, but not utilizing it to replace, but utilizing it to amplify that which we are. And that means, you know, treating ourselves well. That means continuing to work on ourselves while also maybe utilizing some of these technologies as they arise.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I do think it's interesting. So I said to Amy, I was like, so what do you do when you travel? Because I know she travels a lot, right? And she said, well, it's hard to adjust.
Yeah.
So anyway, I do
Fascinating.
think it's interesting. Let's see, what else in the presentation? I think the only thing that I didn't talk about in the presentation, we talked a little bit about data, but I think data is really important. One of the things I did for my book is just like the MIT study that found 95% aren't successful, I did a survey of 1,500 companies. I found 20% of them were seeing a positive ROI. And so what was that driver of the ROI? It was 3 things that I found that was in common in all 20% of those that were successful. One was that they had good data, not just a lot of data, but good quality data.
Yeah.
We covered that. The second was that they started projects looking for a business outcome, first principles, right? Versus I have to do an AI project. Like it's so cool, right? And so they would say, I need to have greater revenue per head count. I need to have greater efficiency.
They had a specific thing that they were aiming to achieve. Yeah.
Not just an AI project.
Oh, let me do it because everybody else is doing it. Yeah, that makes sense.
And those people did not do successful. And then the third thing, which I think we forget about, is change management. And I just did a seminar, and we had, big companies there, like Disney was there, Goldman Sachs was there, Oracle was there, Cloudera was there. And one of the things I said was change management. And someone raised their hand and they said, we've been doing change management forever. I said, yes, but in those 1,500 companies, the ones that were unsuccessful, because AI was so sparkly and magical, they didn't do change management on it. And I'll give you one example. This company in Malaysia, the owner of the manufacturing facility wanted to make sure that his employees had everything they need to be successful. So he said, I've noticed a lot of complaints around, temperature and mood and not getting enough breaks. And so I'm going to do a mood jacket. So, the old mood rings. I don't know if you ever had one, the mood rings. I'm going to do a mood jacket, and my mood jacket is going to sense when one of my employees is hot, too cold, needs a drink, needs music played so they have better energy, that sort of thing. And so he spent 9 months getting the IoT sensors in the jacket and then pulling together the AI behind it to roll up like different pods, different groups, so that he could determine what a group was, and making the data anonymous so nobody knew. They were so excited about the technology that they took 2 hours and they told all the employees, this is what we're going to do. 2 hours. So 9 months on the tech, 2 hours telling the employees and the managers. So what do you think happened? Well, people were like, I'm not wearing this jacket.
Yeah.
Like they're going to try to fire me. Or I'm not wearing the jacket. Like, what are they tracking about me? Like, oh my gosh. And so the whole project failed. It didn't fail because of the tech. It failed because they didn't do change management. They didn't involve the employees. They didn't train the managers and then enable everybody to tell them, hey, this is anonymous. Hey, here's why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I care about you and I want you to have a good experience here. So they forgot all of that. So even though it's something we've talked about and done forever, for whatever reason, it seems like when people start a project that has AI, they completely forget about it. They get so excited about the project that they forget about the people.
Is it getting excited about the project? Like, yes, that. Would it also be we need to move fast? And so there's almost fear that's kicking in as well?
Yeah, I mean, speed is another thing. Like no one wants to be a fast follower anymore. Everybody wants to be first to market. I think that's part of it too. In this particular case in the factory, the guy, if you knew the CEO, he was just so excited.
I bet he was.
And the jackets were freaking cool. My friend designed the jacket, and the jackets were really cool. So I can understand his energy and excitement around it. But yeah, I think that involving humans, that org chart I talked about with marketing where we had all the agents, we decided what agents we were going to have as teammates with a team. We got together as a team. We didn't just say
name them together as well, like Darth Vader and all.
Name them together, get together as a team and do that. That's good change management. So yeah, I would call it an oldie but a goodie. Like it's something that you need to think about as you're walking through, what's happening today.
Yeah. So the team members that you have, the agents that you have, do you celebrate when they have a win?
Oh, yes. And everybody loves Darth Vader, of course. And then
Darth Vader for the win again. Like just saved us another 3 hours.
And then there's another company I helped with it. And they decided to do Alice in Wonderland.
Oh,
I don't know if you know Alice in Wonderland, but
sure.
Alice says, I have to run twice as fast just to stay in place. So they decided to do all their characters. So they have a Cheshire cat, they have Alice, they have the caterpillar. And so their whole team is around Alice in Wonderland. There's actually a whole podcast we could do on, do you name your agent or do you not name your agent too? Yeah. There's a huge debate on that right now with AI ethicists. AI ethicists say, for the most part, you shouldn't name your agent.
You should, yeah.
You should not.
You should not. Why is that?
Because it makes them appear as a human, and they're not a human. It is a piece of software. And so they feel like if you name them, that you give them human characteristics back to that companion, all of that. I think it's just a fun thing. To me, it doesn't make me attached more to it or not. I did have to, we now have so many agents, though I did have to put Darth Vader landing page optimizer, because I kind of forget sometimes what everybody does, all the agents do.
I wonder whether there might be, if you did name them, are there certain biases that may form of, okay, it's more like an employee. Okay, if they didn't do what was required, then there's something from a human standpoint that we do instead of, okay, this is treating them as a piece of software instead. I'm probably more of the camp of that's just a fun thing to do, and
that's where I was. But I showed it once. I think it was like a responsible AI conference, and afterwards I had multiple AI ethicists come up and say, "Do not name your agent." So.
Yeah,
I am checking into that though, just to see if they're right, because I could be wrong.
Yeah. I think going into it with curiosity as well.
Yeah.
When it comes to AI, that from an ethics standpoint, them being curious as well. I think what rather than coming up to you, and this again comes full circle, like the curiosity being the most important thing. That like an ethicist, is that how you say it?
Ethicist. Yeah.
Ethicist. Comes up to you and says, this is the right way and the wrong way of doing something. Says who?
Well, they have, supposedly, they have data that backs it up, that if you name an agent, that you get personally attached to the agent, and therefore you might not be able to separate human qualities from unhuman. So you might actually, that AI companionship thing kicks in, where you treat them differently than you would treat a piece of software.
So then I guess the contrarian view to that then would be, have they looked at how well it enables the team to function?
Yeah.
As an example.
And that's what I thought. Because when we gave them names, people started treating them as a teammate, not as just a piece of software.
Yeah.
And so that was the reward, I thought. Yeah, that's why I have to dig into it a little bit more.
That's where I would say that when somebody comes, because if somebody is coming up, whether an ethicist or something else, saying that this is the right way and the wrong way of doing something, versus coming into it and just simply asking a question, hey, I'm curious. Why is it that you name your agents?
Yeah.
And getting an understanding, because it's through that, then maybe they can then say, oh, have you thought about this? And then it's a conversation that occurs. If we're just going into it to go, well, I'm right, you're wrong, there's no curiosity there.
I completely agree.
There's no curiosity there.
Yeah, it was so funny. We had so many questions that one of my friends is a podcaster too, and she was listening as people came up to me after it, and she goes, we're going to do a podcast on that. So we did a whole hour and a half podcast. Should you name your agent or shouldn't you? Like a whole hour and a half just on that topic. And it was amazing how passionate people are about it.
Yeah.
Like some people are like, you have to name your agents. And others are like, don't name your I mean, it was really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was like, we just did it to, make them part of the team. It was not a big, big exercise. So
yeah. It's
interesting,
right? It is. It's an interesting
Yeah.
one. And I think as time goes on, but it brings me to I think a point when it comes around how people have conversation, are curious or not, right way, wrong way of doing it. And I've shared this a number of times as well, that when it comes to having a conversation with somebody, and even if I ask you a question, if I'm aiming to ask you that question, am I doing it because I'm truly seeking to understand you?
Or argue.
Yeah. Or am I doing it to prove that I'm right?
Yeah.
And I've
That's
seen
true.
this happen in so many cases where the questions and the conversations and how I'm communicating in this example is I'm aiming to position it in a way where I'm going to be right versus going into it with curiosity where I could still come out the other side and still have the same viewpoint. There's nothing, I don't have to take on your viewpoint, but I think that I think we're losing sight of the ability to be able to have these types of conversations where we enter into the conversation with curiosity rather than accusation. And I think if we continue doing that, that's one, going to create further division about what's right and what's wrong. And it reduces our ability to be able to see the world differently or go, hey, I didn't think about it in that way. Or, hey, I at least understand your point of view. I don't agree with it still, but at least I understand it. And we need a bit more understanding in the world.
And I think that's one reason why people love agents so much. I don't know if you've noticed, but like I'll test something either in Gen AI or an agent, and it'll come back and go, you're so insightful. Oh, Sandy, that was so funny.
Oh, you are the best person in the world, according to them, right?
No one else would have thought about that. But seriously, think about that for building a relationship, right? I mean, that is really the agent or the Gen AI building a relationship with you. And sometimes I'll even have to say, hey, be super critical.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to be, saying that I'm the greatest person. I really want your critical thinking here.
Yeah.
But I took a screenshot. I was just screenshotting every time it said that I was so amazing. I have a slide with all these things on it, and it comes from whether it's Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT. I think that it's quite interesting. I think because they learn from the internet, which includes some good things and some bad things, right? How to manipulate people, like tell them they're awesome all the time, but then manipulate them into doing something. I think is one of the things that they learn because they're always so incredibly positive.
I think that'll change over time. I think as time goes on, the ability to be able to have those devices to be able to think critically rather than just praise you and say you're the best in the world. I think that would naturally.
Oh, there we are, right?
Naturally, of course, you are. Me debatable, but you for sure, right? So this has been great so far. We have a rapid fire segment on the show called Your Edge.
Okay.
3 questions. What's your number one value and why? First up.
Number one value, I think, is authenticity. And why? I think today the world is so confused about what's real and what's not that I think being yourself, being who you are, is so incredibly valuable. Just because people don't know what is true. And I think the truth really wins out.
I think there's a leaning in that occurs with that as well. If someone feels that and experiences that, it's almost like they can be themselves around you as well. So I love that. What's a belief that shaped who you become, whether it's a belief about yourself, about others, about the world?
So my grandmother I don't have it on today, I don't think. No, she gave me this necklace, and it's like a crystal or a diamond in the center and then all crystals around it. And she said, that diamond or that crystal in the center is sparkles, but it sparkles greater when you have all those other diamonds around you. So never forget your friends and your family and your tribe because they're the ones who make you sparkle. And for me, that was so incredible. And every time I see that necklace, I think about her and I think about what she always told me. Like, don't forget, like, you are who you are because who you hang out with, who you're supported, my great family, my great husband who supports me. That's what makes you who you are, right? It's not you by yourself.
How old were you when she gave you that?
Let's see. I had just graduated from college. So what's that? 21, maybe 21,
Wow.
something like that.
What a beautiful thing to
And
receive.
she's awesome. She was 4'8",
Okay.
which is very short.
Yep.
And she played on the women's basketball team. They had the first women's basketball team. And 4'8". Yeah, she and my grandfather were both very, very special to me. And
Amazing.
both of them always said, whatever you want to do, you can do it. And she would always say, I was 4'8". And then she was 86, I think. And I would call her up sometimes and I would go, what you doing? She goes, oh, I'm going over to the old people's home to wash some hair. And so she used to be, used to cut hair and do hair and everything. And so she would go to the old people's home to wash their hair at 86.
I love it.
At 86. So she was a big inspiration.
It's beautiful. It's so good. My grandpa started woodworking when he was 80. So
right?
This is a beautiful lesson for me of like, you're never too old to reinvent yourself ever.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's such great insights. What's a habit, routine or ritual that you can't live without, whether it be a daily habit right out to an annual tradition?
Well, one thing that I personally do every day now, and it started, I broke my femur. And so I couldn't do other exercises and everything. So I started swimming and I fall in love with swimming. I find it's almost like a meditative state for me as I'm out there in the water. And it's just so, it's relaxing, it's calming, it's exercise. I just really love it. And before I would have said it's a sissy sport, right? Not something you would do, but I love it now. So I always have to do that. And then for my family, one of the things that we do is we have a red plate. And on the red plate, it says, you are special. And so we bring that out for dinner. We do family dinners. And like if my daughter gets an A in school, she gets the red plate, right? Or my husband gets a promotion, he gets the red plate. Or I keynote at South by Southwest, I get the red plate. And so I think it's really cool that we have that tradition. And my daughters, I hear them all the time, tell other people about it and talk about how special it was for them to be the one with the red plate.
Wow. So good. Thank you for sharing
You're
those.
welcome.
Those three great. Those listening, like implement those kinds of things, right? just if nothing else, like just forget the agents for a moment and just do that, right? So it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Where can people go to find out more, to connect with you, to hear the latest?
So I am on, I think, every social media platform. I am a Sandy_Carter founder on Instagram, Sandy_Carter on X or Twitter, Sandy Carter on LinkedIn. You can reach me at any of those places. I have a website, sandycarter.net, and you can also get my best-selling book from there too.
Outstanding. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this has been great. And for those of you listening, we'll have everything that was mentioned in the show notes linked at cameronatlas.com/podcast. We've got some great new guests coming up, so make sure you hit that follow button, leave a comment, and until next time, go and write the next line in your story. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode here on The Edge of Possible.